beautiful blue of Crater Lake is definitely something you want to see during your lifetime. We were just there a few weeks ago, and I wanted to share some of our tips and recommendations from our trip to Crater Lake so that it can make your time at Crater Lake more enjoyable as you're planning your trip. We went there the third week of September 2020 with our 37-foot RV big rig and bringing our kids and our dog along. So a lot of my tips and recommendations will relate to traveling with kids, traveling with an RV, and traveling with pets. Crater Lake is absolutely beautiful, but it probably only gets about 700,000 visitors a year because it is so difficult to access, or pretty difficult. Not the most difficult we've been to, but definitely a little bit more isolated than others. So you can see Crater Lake is right here on the map. Here is the state of Oregon. It's kind of more central part, or at least it's definitely not coastal. You have to come up into the mountains, and you're pretty isolated on this drive as you're coming into this area. It's about 4 hours from Portland. So as you're heading up I-5 this way, it's about 4 hours. It's about 2 hours from Bend, Oregon. And we actually were coming in from the coastal side, so we came over this way. Let me zoom in a little bit more to show you what that route looked like. We stayed at Coos Bay the evening before we were heading over to Crater Lake, and our intent was to head down the 42 and then head across on 138. We wanted to stop at Vidae Falls, which I hear is beautiful. There's other amazing falls that are in this area, and we really wanted to stop in this area, but because of the wildfires going on in the summer of 2020, this access was closed. So this road was entirely closed. You couldn't get through here. So and we couldn't go see Diamond Lake and stuff. So this road was closed. The other option for access, we originally wanted to come through this way, visit Crater Lake, and then head back down this route and go see Klamath Falls before heading out to Redwoods. But this route was also closed because of a wildfire. So we could not do this route either. And we ended up coming across down I-5 and then through Grants Pass in Medford and then up on this route, State Road 62. So this was open, just barely open. We actually passed by an area over here where there was a fire actively burning off the side of the highway. They were allowing traffic to come through. So we were able to come through, and really once you pass Prospect, you're not going to have any cell service or any internet or cell service the rest of this route, which is probably about another hour, maybe 45 minutes or so into Crater Lake. And you're not going to have any cell service in Crater Lake too. We have AT&T, we have Verizon Unlimited, and we have a Sprint card, and none of those three services could provide us any sort of cell service or internet access while we were here at Crater Lake. So just so you have that expectation, you're going to want to make sure you do any of your last stuff as you're still out of town when you still have some access, because you probably won't have any access when you're directly in here. So now we'll go through and kind of show you the details on Crater Lake and the specifics of being in this space. We stayed in Mazama Village, which is the closest campground that you can stay at. It's within the actual national park boundary. And we stayed there with our 37-foot big rig, so you can stay there with a big RV. We were probably at the upper end of what could fit there. If you're staying here with a smaller trailer, you'll be fine. And then, of course, you can tent camp here as well. The cost was about $40 a night, and we have a whole review that just talks about the campground here and staying here with a big rig if you want to find that. Otherwise, there's cabins that are nearby, and there's a lodge as well. So a bunch of different options if you want to stay right here at the NPS site, and that really gives you your best, closest access. So I highly recommend doing that. Staying here will give you good access to be able to do the rim drive, which is what most people really do when they come to Crater Lake. It's a 33-mile drive that goes around the lake. It is not open year-round, so just the western part is open in the winter months because they get so much snowfall. But this is the start of it for us. We really stopped at the park headquarters, just got a map, and then headed over by Discovery Point, as you can see here, to try to get a view of Wizard Island, which is there in the kind of western center part of Crater Lake. Crater Lake, of course, was formed when the 12,000-foot volcano that used to stand here erupted about 7,700 years ago, left a large caldera, and then that fills up with snow and rain throughout the winter months and a little bit of runoff from the mountains here. And it has created a lake that is almost 2,000 feet in depth. So it is the deepest lake that we have in the United States. It's also the clearest lake. So you can put this black and white disc that goes down into the lake to see how good the clarity is of the water, and it can go down to 130 feet and still be visible. So it's a super clear lake, and that's something that I'm not sure my video totally captures that, but hopefully you can just tell that it's really amazing to see, and the color is really incredible. The critters are obviously being fed here because they come out and almost attack you trying to get near you. We did not feed them, of course. There you can see on the right is Wizard Island. Wizard Island is not actually left over from the eruption. It's actually kind of a new eruption that has started underneath. There's a few other eruptions, but they are underneath the water still. This is an active volcano, so it could, actually probably will blow at some point in time, but it won't be for thousands of years. That peak you just saw is Watchman Peak, and we're standing here at the Watchman Overlook. You can actually hike from this point for about a 1.5 mile round trip up the 400-foot point of the peak and then head back down. Not super strenuous. They consider it kind of a moderate path in order to do that hike. If you just had one day at Crater Lake, I highly recommend doing the rim drive. It's, like I said, it's 33 miles. It'll take you a couple of hours just to drive around it and hit some of the viewpoints and just stop and take some pictures. If you want to add a hike in there, I would increase that by a couple of hours. We spent the day from about 9:30 till about 2 o'clock doing the rim drive and then doing one of the hikes. And because we had limited time, we didn't do the Watchman Peak hike, but we did the Cleetwood Cove hike, which I'll show you in just a minute here. As it goes with kids, you just kind of have to pick your battles and decide how many hikes that they're going to get through. And the Cleetwood Cove hike is a really great hike because it's the only one that will take you down into the lake. So you can actually hike down and get into the water and be near the water and even go into the water. But it is a bit more strenuous and a bit steep, and I knew that there would be tears if I put the kids on too many hikes in one day. You may have noticed in that video back there the large poles that help them with the snow plows. They get 42 feet of snow here at Crater Lake in the winter months, and it's not uncommon to come here in July and still have snow on the ground. So as I mentioned, we were here the third week of September, and if you really want that clear weather, kind of August, September is your best bet. Now we're continuing along the East Rim Drive, so past the point of the North Junction. This is only open in the summer months, up through probably sometime in October until the snow gets to be too bad. It's also your only access to Cleetwood Cove Trail. So like I mentioned, the Cleetwood Cove Trail is considered more strenuous. It's a little over 2 miles, and the elevation change is 700 feet in those 2 miles. So in that mile that you head down and then back up. So it's a little bit steep, and it was a little tough for the kids, but there are some benches and places you can sit down and take a break. Definitely doable. Not any more steep than some of the other hikes we'd been on in this Pacific Northwest area, like Hurricane Hill in Olympic and the Skyview Trail at Mount Rainier were definitely even more strenuous. So wasn't something the kids couldn't do, but if you have bad knees or some mobility issues, it's going to be a difficult trail to do. The other thing to know about Cleetwood Cove Trail is that in addition to being the only legal way to access the water at Crater Lake, it's also the point that you go to if you're taking the boat tour out to Wizard Island. So during the summer of 2020, because of COVID, they canceled all the boat tours, and so there were no tours going on. And quite honestly, at the end of September, I knew that we weren't going to be able to do a boat tour anyway because they don't do them that late in the year. It's more in the specific summer months. So we knew that we weren't going to have that option anyway, but during COVID, it was canceled as well. The boat tour, though, normally would take you from the Cleetwood Cove Trail and take you out to Wizard Island, where you could spend a couple of hours exploring the island. Swimming is allowed at this point only right here at the base of the Cleetwood Cove Trail, and only with swimsuits. So you're not allowed to have any wetsuits or life jackets or any sort of rafts or floaty devices or anything like that. They want to make sure that they're not allowing any invasive species to come into the lake and disrupt the natural environment here. So you can do some swimming and dip your toes in. The water is definitely cold, although the kids said that the water on the Pacific coast up by Olympic National Park was a lot colder. Of course, they were able to wear their wetsuits when we were in that water though. But you can dip in here. You can even fully dive in if you can brave the cold and you don't mind it. So we just decided to dip our feet in. The other thing is that you are allowed to fish here. So you have to just use artificial bait. You're not allowed to have any sort of live bait, but you can fish here. There are not any fish that are native to the lake here, but 100 years ago, they stocked the lake with fish, wanting to try to bring more tourism and not understanding the impact that would have on the natural environment. So unfortunately now there's a ton of fish here. So they allow you to fish. You don't even need a fishing license to fish here. And you can catch as much as you want and keep it. You just have to make sure that you're using artificial bait, no live bait. The blue water is really spectacular when you're down here right next to it. You can appreciate just how clean and clear this water is, that just the blue wavelengths kind of reflect back towards your eyes and just make it appear so incredibly blue. It's not polluted by other inlets or streams or anything else. Oh, out here you can just kind of see something floating in the water. That's the old man. It's actually a western hemlock that has fallen down into the water, and just a little bit of the tip of it pops up onto the water surface, and so you see this little thing floating out there, and they call it the old man. So I was looking for that the whole time we were there, and we did happen to see it out in the distance. As you continue along the East Rim Drive, the road becomes a bit more rough, and you have more kind of the switchbacks and tighter spaces. I think they even actually had limitations on what kind of vehicles could be on that east side. So don't plan to bring your large RV around here. You're not going to want to do that. We actually kept the RV at the campsite, and then we drove our Jeep Wrangler around the park, and that worked out perfectly. The other great thing about having the RV parked at the campsite is being able to let our dog stay there. It did have electric, so we could run the fan or the air conditioning for her, but the dogs are not really allowed most anywhere within the park. So there's a couple of trails, not anywhere near the lake though, or even within a view of the lake, where the dogs are allowed. So they're not going to be able to go on the trails with you, and you certainly can't leave them in the car. So it's better to just have them safely in the RV, especially if you can still run the AC or the generator and keep it nice and cool for them, and then just go out for the day and explore the park on your own without animals. That's really the best way to do it. When you're on the other side, for the East Rim side, the other cool thing that you can see is a closer view of Phantom Ship. So Phantom Ship is the other island that is there that's visible. It's smaller than Wizard Island. So you can see here Wizard Island is way out there in the distance. We're now on the other side of it from where we were earlier. This, I think, is the cloud cap overlook where I'm standing right now, and you can see this view. And then the Phantom Island, or Phantom Ship Island, is off there in the distance, and I'll get a closer view of it in just a second. The other nice thing about being on this side of the lake is that the lighting changed and the reflection of the sun was a little bit different. So some of our really blue pictures actually came from going over to this side of the park. So if you're a photographer and you care about getting that really bright blue color, you might just have to change where your location is on the lake in order to get the appropriate bounce of the wavelength so that it gives that really blue color. And we found that in the afternoon to be on the eastern side of the park. Here's another view of Phantom Ship from the overlook. They do a really good job of having different interpretive signs here at the different pull-offs so that you can learn a little bit more about the area. And they're actually in pretty good quality, and you can even read them. So that was a nice feature. And then as you continue along, you can head up to, we wanted to head out to Pinnacles. There's these large pinnacles, which used to be fumaroles that have just kind of developed up into these big rock structures. but the road was closed because they had downed branches and trees and stuff, and they just hadn't cleared that for the summer. So we were not able to take I think it's about a 6-mile drive that takes you out to the Pinnacles Overlook. We weren't able to do that, but we could see some of this other cool rock formation stuff on the side of the road as we headed over to Vidae Falls, and this is Vidae Falls. So if you like waterfalls, this one you don't have to hike to. You can literally just pull your car up and check this one out. There's also some other falls, but you do need to do a little bit of hiking if you want to enjoy them. Vidae Falls was the last stop on the loop, and then we headed back to Mazama Village. I would highly recommend staying at least one night. We stayed 2 nights. Well, we booked 2 nights so that we have a full entire day to spend at the park and take our time and know that the rig was parked somewhere and the dog could be able to be with AC or a fan because we were plugged into electricity or able to run the generator. And I think that's a great way to travel the national parks, is to be sure that you have somewhere for your pet to be and your RV to be so that you can enjoy it for the day. So we stayed for the 2 nights and then explored the park on the day between those 2 nights. And that seemed to work really well. You certainly could spend more days here and do some of the other hikes, but I think at a minimum, if you stay 1 overnight, you can get a lot of the experience in for Crater Lake. So hopefully this review was useful to you. If you liked it, please give me a thumbs up or give me some comments. Also, feel free to subscribe to us. We have different reviews on campgrounds and staying at the national parks and all sorts of travel and fun stuff with your RV. So thanks so much for watching. Safe travels.